David, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gagana. And can you hear me all right?
Perfectly.
Okay, just give me a moment to share my presentation.
Now you should be able to. Yeah, it's coming.
All right, can you see everything?
Perfect full screen.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you to Biotech Atelier and its organizers at the Bulgarian Association for Personalized Medicine, as well as Prescriptia for the invitation to speak with you all today. I'm very honored to offer the final keynote for today's series of discussions focused on patient empowerment and health outcomes, and honestly quite humbled as this is not only my first opportunity to speak with a European audience, but my first professional keynote address. My name is David Davenport, and I'm the Manager of Public and Science Policy at the Personalized Medicine Coalition based in Washington, D.C. And during my remarks today, I will focus on what our organization has learned about patients' priorities for personalized medicine through a project that we conducted from 2018 to 2020. The Personalized Medicine Coalition consists of over 200 healthcare organizations throughout the United States and abroad, and we represent innovators, scientists, patients, providers, and payers to promote the understanding and adoption of personalized medicine. Believing that paradigm shifts, especially in medicine, do not happen just because the science and new technologies suggest that they should, our efforts focus on education, advocacy, and evidence development. PMC defines personalized medicine as an approach to care that accounts for a patient's biology by using information from molecular diagnostic tests in combination with a patient's medical history, values, and circumstances to develop targeted treatment and prevention plans. Even though personalized medicine has really made great strides, there are fundamental gaps in awareness and access that impact the speed at which personalized medicine is integrated into healthcare. So to advance personalized medicine, we believe that the healthcare system must account for patients' needs and priorities. Over the course of 2 years, my colleagues at PMC and I conducted a project called Moving Beyond Population Averages. The project developed a research agenda with patients and other stakeholders. During the project, we engaged more than 120 individuals to develop a research agenda built on principles defined by patients to advance personalized medicine across disease areas. The participants included patients, patient advocates, caregivers, patient advocacy organization representatives, healthcare professionals, researchers, and other stakeholders. The participants represented diverse backgrounds, disease areas, had varying health needs, and also had different levels of experience with personalized medicine. Throughout the process to develop the research agenda, we prioritized input from patients. The project consisted of a series of 4 web forums with patients that identified guiding principles and top-line priorities for the research agenda, an online collaboration platform to brainstorm related research questions, a virtual roundtable with 55 patients and other stakeholders, including healthcare professionals and industry representatives, to refine the research questions, and a 27-person advisory committee consisting largely of patient representatives guided this entire process. The goal for this patient-centered research agenda was to identify priorities to inform research that can provide patients, caregivers, and healthcare professionals with the information they need to make more informed healthcare decisions and improve the delivery of personalized medicine to patients in ways that is ultimately most meaningful to them. The final research agenda included 45 research questions. These research questions were broken out over 9 topic areas, and each of these topics raises important considerations for how to improve the quality and quantity of interactions between patients and providers. So, what did we learn about patients' priorities? I'll take you on a quick journey through the research agenda, and along the way, I'll highlight important themes and also share how these priorities relate to the experiences of some of the patients who participated. First, when discussing personalized medicine treatment options, patients want the decision-making process to be informed by their values and circumstances as much as their genetic information. During the web forum sessions, we worked with patients and caregiver participants to identify aspects of their values and circumstances that they believed are important to consider in the decision-making process. Patients and caregivers identified 8 criteria when it comes to their values, and this included personal priorities, religious and spiritual values, societal and cultural values such as family involvement in care decisions, views around their quality of life, privacy concerns, their desired level of access to and ability to understand personal genetic information, beliefs about their health and their personal responsibility, as well as attitudes and preferences towards end of life. In terms of patient and caregiver circumstances, our participants identified 22 aspects that should be considered. And while I won't list all of them today, I'll highlight that they included a broad range, such as emotional state, socioeconomic situation, race and ethnicity, a patient's access to health insurance, their attitude towards their diagnosis, the preferences of their family members, their treatment settings, such as whether it's in a community hospital or an academic medical center, their familiarity with personalized medicine, social determinants of health, and other expressed needs or barriers. In the research questions, patients also pointed to the importance of addressing gaps in expectations when it comes to the diagnostic testing process, how to encourage more active participation in the decision-making process, or even what to do when a patient really does not want to get involved all that much and feels uncomfortable questioning their doctor. Opportunities to discuss access and affordability when it comes to making treatment decisions also came up. Patients emphasized the importance of a shared decision-making process between a patient and his provider, and the importance of discussing treatment options as they align with their values and circumstances. Laura was one of the participants in the project, and she's a stage 4 breast cancer survivor. And she shared a lot about how she felt a productive shared decision-making with her oncologist really helped her get the best care possible, and it even prompted her to do some things that she would have not done otherwise, such as getting her family members tested for their inherited cancer risk. The second research topic focused on patient education, and we learned that many patients and caregivers simply do not know what to ask, when, and to whom in order to receive personalized medicine. Even with adequate educational resources, patients and caregivers may feel overwhelmed by the amount and complexity of information. Therefore, education really needs to happen throughout the healthcare journey, especially pre-diagnosis. Our patient advocates and patient representatives pointed to the role of educational tools and resources, the importance of considering the timing of patient education, especially when a patient just receives a diagnosis. For example, they might be in a bit of a shock about what this means for them, and they're not able to fully process all of the information that's being thrown at them or make fully informed decisions. Our participants also pointed to the need to reframe materials for specific audiences, not just translating them, for example, into a different language. And finally, patient advocacy organizations can play a pivotal role when it comes to patient education, and they may be able to play a role in helping educate providers as well around developments when it comes to new treatments in disease areas. Ella was one of the participants in the project, and I believe she actually had the honor of speaking with you all last year, and she was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis. And after benefiting from a new targeted therapy, Ella now volunteers with patient advocacy organizations to educate other cystic fibrosis patients about personalized medicine treatments that may be available depending on their mutation. Personalized medicine approaches must consider caregivers and the family too. This involves involving caregivers in the decision-making process, considering how a patient might need to explain genetic health risk to their family members, addressing barriers that, or taboos that a family may have when it comes to discussing family health and family health history. Caregivers who were participating really wanted to be prepared for health transitions as their child becomes an adult and is responsible for managing their own care. There's also an opportunity to train patients before new personalized medicines become available for their disease or condition, so that they're prepared and know what to do when the treatment becomes available so that they can access it. And one of the participants in the project, Mike, who's a caregiver to his boy, Tony, was diagnosed as a newborn with SYNGAP1, which is a rare genetic disorder. And even though researchers have not yet found a cure for Mike's son, he is grateful that a diagnosis can now help inform care decisions. And while he shared that he doesn't believe that his son Tony will ever be at the point where he is able to make independent health decisions, he is really passionate about making sure that not only he, but the SYNGAP1 rare disease community are prepared for when a treatment does become available for their disease. Provider barriers also compound patients' education and access challenges. And so participants in the project pointed to barriers that providers have when it comes to sharing and discussing information. And they saw opportunities after developing a mutual understanding with the healthcare professionals who were participating. They saw importance in involving health professionals beyond a single physician to really leverage the collective knowledge to educate patients about personalized medicine. There were also opportunities to leverage genetic counselors when it comes to selecting the most appropriate genetic test and communicating limitations such as how a patient's condition could still have a genetic driver even if they receive a negative test result. And at the end of the day, patients really saw a need for patients to have their own educational and clinical decision support tools. One of the patients who participated is Terry, who has sickle cell disease, and she shared her concerns about how when she's had to go to the hospital for a pain crisis, that her providers at the hospital are just not familiar with how to treat the problems caused by sickle cell. And so she felt that not every patient feels comfortable or would be willing to advocate for their needs. And so patients want to see providers empowered too. When it comes to access, affordability, and utilization, throughout the project, we heard phrases like good fortune should not play a central role in one's ability to access personalized medicine, and luck should not be a part of the equation. So patients pointed to the importance of timely access to new or off-label treatments, the importance of improving utilization of personalized medicine in underserved populations, the need to offset basic needs when it comes to accessing healthcare, like transportation or childcare costs that may make it difficult for a patient to access the care that they need. We also discussed the importance of considering how these changes, how these needs and barriers changed depending on the purpose of a genetic test. And one of the patient participants, Richard, who's a former hemodialysis patient and received a kidney transplant, he now leads the American Association for Kidney Patients, and he shared how Kidney disease happens more often in African, Caribbean, and Latin American populations, but these communities also face additional barriers to healthcare that make it harder to access the diagnostic tests that can help them understand either their risk for developing kidney disease or manage their treatment post-transplant. In terms of coverage and reimbursement, there was a consensus that coverage and reimbursement structures should try to facilitate opportunities for continued patient and caregiver education around test results and personalized medicine treatment options. So how can billing codes and payment incentives be used to facilitate patient education, whether that is with a provider or a pharmacist or a genetic counselor. There was also discussion about the challenges of reimbursement policies, at least in the United States. It is a web, and it is often difficult for providers to navigate all of the different reimbursement policies for different tests. And so perhaps leveraging genetic counselors in the decision-making process could help there. In addition, we talked about the emergence of cell and gene therapies, how payers are trying to build the evidence around personalized medicine to make decisions, and the use of value-based contracts to help pay for some new emerging therapies. And patients were really emphatic that when it comes to determining the value and what matters to patients, that their perspectives and preferences must have a role in determining that value. One of the patient participants, Carissa, tested positive for a BRCA2 mutation, and thanks to a good health insurance policy, she was actually covered to meet with a genetic counselor. And that helped her really create a plan with her doctor to manage her risk for cancer. But she did feel like for patients who might not have had that meeting with the genetic counselor covered, they wouldn't have access to that service to learn more about how to manage their risk. In terms of clinical trials, advancing personalized medicine really requires health data that represents all populations affected by a disease. And during our discussions, the patient participants settled on two main questions, which include what changes are needed in the design and execution of clinical trials, including outreach, recruitment, and funding, to ensure representation of all populations affected by a disease, including minority populations and women, as well as how can healthcare providers build trust with patients and caregivers and patient communities from diverse backgrounds to address their concerns and fear of mistreatment, including the potential misuse of their health information when deciding on personalized medicine treatment options and whether or not they should enroll in a clinical trial. Throughout our conversations, patients also pointed to the need for educational programs to include cultural and religious organizations, such as faith-based health ministries, to address historical, cultural, and religious experiences, fears, or taboos that may engender mistrust and present obstacles to participation in research. When it comes to new technology and data management, we discussed how rapid innovation in personalized medicine really complicates patient and physician education. However, new technologies can offer solutions. So there was interest among patients as well as the healthcare professionals in things like data sharing to increase transparency and facilitate dynamic learning around personalized medicine use and outcomes. Leveraging real-world data to support healthcare providers in selecting the most appropriate treatment option for an individual patient. How can we improve the informed consent process to account for evolutions in technology like artificial intelligence and digital health technologies to establish trust with patients and caregivers over the use of their information? And in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, how can things like telehealth be used to facilitate continued patient education? One of the patient participants, Brad, was diagnosed with lymphoma, and he was fortunately able to be treated effectively with chemotherapy. But during that process, he advocated to have his cancer sequenced because once he learned about personalized medicine, he wanted to use this information to identify treatments that might have fewer side effects than chemotherapy should his cancer return. Finally, outcomes research in personalized medicine. Our discussions pointed to the fact that multidisciplinary teams are essential to ensure comprehensive care, support, and education for patients embarking on personalized medicine treatment approaches. And the roles of healthcare professionals, including genetic counselors, pharmacists, nurse navigators, and social workers, should be maximized to help alleviate some of the burdens for expertise and patient education that can fall on physicians. Our research questions pointed to patients' interest in measuring the impact of patients' and providers' understanding of genomics on the delivery of personalized medicine and patient outcomes, as well as how involving specialists like nurse navigators or community health workers or even peer navigators into the decision-making process impacts patients' long-term health outcomes. Finally, patients also want the research to inform their own decisions. And there was a lot of talk about how outcomes research is useful not only for providers and payers, but patients want this research to be presented in layman's terms so it can help them understand their own trade-offs when it comes to risk versus benefit. Or the value of personalized medicine, for example, in preventing the onset of a disease or a condition. Margie has type 1 diabetes and has also been a caregiver to family members that have type 1 diabetes. And she wants personalized medicine to help her and her family members understand how to best manage their disease and improve their quality of life and well-being. And so she advocated, along with others, for the importance of outcomes research, measuring not just health outcomes, but things like the impact of care on financial health, a patient's psychosocial well-being, and their overall experience receiving care. So to just point to several key takeaways, I'll highlight that first, patients want and need education throughout their disease journey, including pre-diagnosis to be empowered to advocate for their access to personalized medicine. Second, patients and caregivers believe it is just as important, if not more so, for providers to consider their individual values and circumstances over their biological differences, and this should be a part of the treatment decision-making process. Third, it is critical to address health disparities. Participants from underrepresented communities emphasize that transparency and building trust are needed to engage their communities and address historical fears associated with medical research. Clinical trials must also be improved to ensure representation of all populations affected by a disease. And finally, healthcare professionals must listen to their patients and have more nuanced conversations to address these and other considerations, but they face their own barriers as well. And patients want providers to address their own barriers too, or else these barriers will only compound their own. To further patients' priorities, I'd like to highlight several other initiatives that PMC has conducted. So at the end of the project, when we published the white paper with the research agenda, it was directed towards researchers, and we heard from the patients on our advisory committee that they would benefit from having the findings shared in a way that is directed towards patients to help educate their communities about these priorities and opportunities for research. So we recently published a series of briefs that go through each of these topic areas in plain language. We also have published an educational campaign at mtan.org to educate patients about personalized medicine and its benefits. The website includes a guide prompting patients to ask questions about how they could receive or advocate for their access to personalized medicine throughout their healthcare journey. Third, this summer, PMC also began a new study bringing together stakeholders who are part of or work closely with communities underrepresented in healthcare research. And the objective here is to develop a report outlining recommendations on how to increase the proportion of underrepresented groups in health research and ultimately better account for diverse populations in health data. I'd like to thank the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute in the United States who funded this project and acknowledge the rest of my team members who helped lead the 2-year effort, as well as our patient partners. And most importantly, I'd like to thank the patients who participated in the project and shared with us their experiences and ideas about how we can make healthcare better for them. I encourage you to download the report using the link on this slide. And if I had to offer you one final thought, it would be this. To realize the full potential of personalized medicine, we must go beyond changing the healthcare system for patients. We must change it with them. Thank you.
Thank you, David. This was terrific and really amazing project. And having patients' priorities according and regarding personalized medicine is really important. One of the questions in the chat was about the after actions. After the project, what happened, and did you address and share the findings with other stakeholders? But I believe you've answered the questions in your final slides. So here is the report, and probably did you approach different stakeholders like regulators, researchers, or other healthcare professionals directly with this report and the findings within the project?
Yeah, so as part of our dissemination, so as I mentioned, the report was funded through the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute. And so we really leveraged their network, which involves healthcare professionals, outcomes researchers. They have an entire network of patient ambassadors who are interested in outcomes research and are trained to advocate. So we shared the report through their networks. We also leveraged PMC's own coalition. So as I mentioned, we have more than 200 organizations, and that includes pharmaceutical and diagnostic companies, research and clinical care institutions, as well as a number of patient organizations. I will say that we did not have participation in the project from any regulators, but we did have a representative from the U.S. National Institutes of Health. And just in case if it isn't clear, the report, it does not answer all of these questions. The objective here was to really, create a brain trust and identify opportunities for research. And it's really challenging because when you go through and talk about all of these topics, I can see a lot of areas where there's already groups working on this. But I would say, I think patients, they're interested in all of these priorities. And from an academic research perspective, I think the outcomes researchers were also interested in how addressing these priorities ultimately improves patients' outcome when it comes to personalized medicine.
And are there any ongoing projects or initiatives focused on patient engagement, patient advocacy, being a part of Bulgarian Association Personalized Medicine that is a member of PMC? I am receiving different type of information and invitations to join patient advocacy groups, discussions, but are there participants outside USA involved in these initiatives?
Yeah, so I will say that the United States, the PMC is primarily a US focused organization. We are a small but mighty team of 8 people. And so doing international advocacy does go beyond us. But as I said in the beginning, we do have international members, including international patient advocacy organizations and research institutions. And, we really do lean on them to help get the word out about our efforts. And as you mentioned, everyone in our membership is a welcomed part of all of our efforts.
Yes, I would say that even sharing or having the good example and practices from the US are useful for the members of the community.
Yeah, and I will say, since a lot of the considerations around, for example, coverage and reimbursement were US focused, I really would be interested if anyone has thoughts about how those considerations differ, say, in Europe, when it comes to the coverage and reimbursement for meeting with a genetic counselor. I'd be curious to learn more.
Great. So probably we can set up a plan for a trans-ocean collaboration.
That sounds amazing. And if you do have any questions or ideas about the project, my email address is on the slide, ddavenport@personalizedmedicinecoalition.org. Please do reach out to me, and I'm happy to respond and share what I can.
Thank you, David. Greetings to you and to the entire amazing team of PMC. It's always a pleasure to have you around, and good luck with all your activities.
Thank you, Gergana, and thank you for inviting us back to speak. And I hope everyone over there on the European time has a nice evening.
Thank you, and have a nice and successful day to you.
Thank you, Gergana.
And with that, I would like to close a long but really special and inspiring day, day 2 of Biotech Atelier 2022.